Welcome to this episode of Tech Threads. I'm your host, Max Watson, and today I talked with Ryan Jenson, co-founder of the Utah Product Guild and principal product manager at Grow.com. Well, Ryan, welcome to Tech Threads. Glad we could have you on.
Yeah, thanks, Max. It's been looking forward to it. So grateful you could have me on.
Yeah, this is fun because you're one of the co-founders of the UPG community, which we've done all of these for. So it's kind of fun to see your perspective on things. We've been talking about kind of in the past about this kind of engineering and PM hybrid. And today
Yeah,
we're kind of like pivoting more into like a PM design hybrid, which is kind of more of your expertise and kind of where you come from. But before we jump into that, could you explain for like maybe the random person who might not know who you are, but that's part of the UPG community, like, could you explain who you are, kind of what you do?
yeah, for sure. So I'm Ryan Jenson. Braden and I'm sure most of your listeners know Braden, right? Him and I started UPG, I think December 2022. So yeah, I've been super excited. It's been a fun ride. And professionally, that's kind of just a fun thing for us. But professionally, I'm a principal product manager for a company called Grow.com. Which is we have a parent company called Epicor, which acquired Grow right when I got there. So technically an employee of Epicor now, but kind of work on the Grow product. We're doing a big refactor right now, or kind of a replatforming of our product right now. So it's
Mhm.
been super fun to do that.
Well, sweet. Yeah, it sounds awesome. I know most people know you and kind of have like your expertise and your experience, but how did you kind of like start out getting into product and what kind of led you towards this kind of product design expertise that you kind of gained throughout your career?
Yeah, good quick question. So starting off with like how I got into product in general, one of the I think back when I was going to BYU undergrad, and I was just kind of looking for a part-time job, and took a job as like an SEO manager. Just kind of, I didn't even know like what that was really. But my buddy of mine was doing SEO, and so I joined on. It was kind of my first experience into just like tech in general, right? The tech scene, and
Right.
kind of fell in love with tech right away. And as I was doing that, I like thought about going kind of the engineering route in general. But it had always been like a plan of mine to do more of business stuff. I'd always wanted to
Hmm.
go get an MBA. And so that was always in the back of my mind. And I was like trying to think about how I could kind of combine those things almost, like I was thinking about like trying to boot camp, just kind of like try out engineering. And then I was actually one of your other guests, Jacob Draper, which I enjoyed
Hmm.
his podcast. Him and I are good buddies. We go way back, and it was after like a Saturday basketball session. We were playing some ball. He was like, "Dude, you should check out this product management thing." It's like because I was telling him about that exact thing, right? Like technology and business combination, and
Right.
his dad was an engineer for a long, long time, and he like I think this is back even before him and I both either of us got into product management. And he was like, "Dude, you should check out have you heard of this product management thing?" And I was like, "Nah, dude, that sounds pretty sweet." And so I kind of had that like bug planted in my ear a long, long time ago, and then just kind of worked my way that way as I kind of figured out how to combine business and technology together.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a great definition of product management because I've also seen like the Venn diagrams that they have, and it's like tech, business, and then like design. And that's like, right. It
Yeah,
seems like exactly kind of what you fell into, which is
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. And so and then on like the second part of your question on the design side of things, I when I was going to school, I tried out a couple of like coding classes, kind of, because as you're working as a product manager, you're working directly with all these engineers, right? And so
Mhm.
I tried out a couple engineering classes just to like kind of be able to speak their language a little bit. And
Right.
I found it like, you've had a lot of people on that kind of talk about the combination or kind of the hybrid of those two things. And I found that that's like not really my thing. Like I'm not engineering wasn't, I wasn't good at it. Like I tried it a couple of times and like just didn't come naturally. Like I can kind of like, it was nice to be able to like understand the language and like kind of, see these different things, and kind of get into code and like follow along a little bit, but like it was tough for me. It didn't come naturally. And so I kind of like if you're talking about that Venn diagram and you're kind of leaning them into one of the spaces, a lot of people are kind of
Right.
product and engineering, and I like kind of just naturally kind of shifted the other way because I was like, oh, engineering is not like a big thing of mine, but like I just kind of naturally gravitated towards kind of more of the product/design side of things.
Yeah, and that's kind of exactly what a lot of the articles we've talked about, a lot of the guests we've had on say that like you used to be able to be a generalist and just kind of be in the middle, but now everyone's kind of specializing. So you kind of have to be like a PM and lean towards like one of those sides. Like either go straight design or go engineering. And that's kind of like this new role that's being
Yeah.
developed. Like for you, when you gained like your design experience and you kind of like started to really enjoy that, what did you do to kind of deepen your understanding in it? And what do you think helped you get that, that
Yeah.
design mindset?
It almost like, well, first it came out of necessity. So like when I first joined Grow, we we had a pretty good designer, but he left like unfortunately like just left the company. I think he went to Google or something like that, but he left like right pretty shortly after I got there. And we were just like, well, we don't have a designer now. And I was like, well, freak, I'm not gonna like, we're just not, I'm not gonna let my product just like not get stuff done, right? Like we can't just like not build things, you know? And so I was like, well, we luckily had a pretty decent component library, and stuff like that in Figma. And so
Mhm.
like a lot of YouTube videos and just like trial and error to like figure out how to like make designs, right? And caveat it with like, hey, I'm not a designer and this isn't pixel perfect, but like let me put something together for you so you have like so the developer has an idea of what to build, versus just like drawing on a piece of paper, right? So I found it just kind of
Right.
fun, fascinating, interesting to like learn the design tools, and Figma is what we were using, and just kind of pick up Figma, learn how to do it, and um, you know, just trial and error on the job, and then tons of like Figma's a big tool, so it's like a lot of like
Mhm.
YouTubing too, like figure out how to like best practices also, because you can really do a lot of cool things, or you can make it not so great also.
Right. Was YouTube kind of like your biggest kind of like driver in that? Because I know like a lot of things, especially for me, because I'm an engineer, and so like yeah, I totally get it's like nothing comes easy. Sometimes you just gotta like bang your head against it until it
Yeah.
works. But there's always like that 20% that if you get that 20%, then like everything seems to flow better. Did you ever have that moment? Is there like a 20% that you think really helped you, like push you along, that maybe listeners out there could like tune into that if they want to get better at design?
Yeah, I think YouTube was probably the biggest thing because it was like I would be watching like something on YouTube about Figma, and they'd be like doing something like, how do they do that? Like I've never seen that done before. That's like super cool though, and just like start to dig into like
Right.
how like that like new advanced feature on Figma that I'd never heard of, because I'm like sitting here like making snapshots or screenshots of this, that, and the other, and I'm like, whoa, you can do that with it, and like just kind of like I better dig into that because that looks like a really up the game. And I think it was like learning how to prototype in Figma was ended up being really
Mhm.
cool because I loved being able to have almost like a working prototype that I could then take users through, even if it was like our internal users, just like, hey, I got this thing that you can now click into, and like, does this work good for you or does it not work good for you? And just like using that as like a display as I was talking to users and making sure that it worked right was super fascinating to me.
Yeah, we even because in college I took a couple like I think they were called human computer interaction classes, which is like basically like design. Like our whole semester was just designing like an app or a product that we could sell, and we use Figma a lot with like the wireframes, and it was cool to be able to like actually show something that you could like connect buttons to next screens, and
Yeah,
people would like click it. They actually some people even thought it was a real app. I was
that's
like,
cool.
I wish, but it's just like it's just kind of that thing. Like the prototyping is really cool to do
Yeah.
that. Do you see anything that like for PMs out there that they like it's a common kind of like weakness or like a sore spot that a lot of PMs have when it comes to like designing, whether it's like Figma or just any design principle that you think people don't really focus on as much, but that could drive a lot of value?
Um, One of the biggest things I tried to keep was like a lot of things that I think PMs don't think about, or at least I didn't think about as a PM, was like consistency throughout the app and like design systems, right? Because like sometimes you're just like, oh,
Hmm.
I'm gonna design this feature, and I think it should be really cool doing XYZ with it. And then when I did have a designer, I'd pass it off to him and be like, hey, this I think it'd be cool if it did this or that or the other. This is how I think it could work really cool. And then he'd come back and be like, hey man, I like your ideas, but and like he'd have this whole new thing that like actually flowed well, and worked a lot better within the confines of the app. And I think like the actual like beyond just the design and like how it looked, like the actual user flow and like the workflow of it, and like
Hmm.
make sure that actually like is this too many button clicks, or is this the actual like interaction that a user will have with the app and not just like the UI look of it. I think sometimes like the UX
Right.
side gets left behind, and it's the harder thing to do. I think
Hmm.
it's like
Yeah.
UI. I think even AI is really good at the UI part right now. You can just be like, hey, give me an app that looks like this, and it'll just pop it out for you, right? But like
Right.
actually through how the user will actually use it, I think sometimes gets left behind.
Yeah, do you have because I took a lot of I think two classes on like this user research methods. Do you have any that you use that you seem to drive a lot of value for you? Because like I remember for us, a lot of it was like we'd love to build prototypes and then just give it to users and not say a thing. And just be like, hey,
Yeah.
use it. Like, what do you like? What do you think you should do? Like, what makes sense? And it really like showed us our weaknesses and like, oh, they have no idea, or this is like way too confusing, or like it's not obvious that this is what this button does, or like this feature does.
Yeah.
Do you have any other methods that you've seen that like help you in that process that you think are like, that work for you really well?
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorites. I love what you said there. Like just about like making something, especially if you can make a prototype that actually like works, like giving
Hmm.
it to them and letting them do stuff with it without you guiding them. Like I think as product
Hmm.
managers, I did it so many times was like trying to like lead them and guide them like, hey, now go do this and then go do this and go do this. And it's like, well, of course they're going to use the app properly if you tell them how to use it right.
Hmm.
And so like
Yeah.
having the restraint, is super helpful and just like letting them like kind of get lost, right? If that
Hmm.
happens to be how it goes, like that's almost the most use of feedback is if they get lost or they can't figure out how to do something, or you watch them rage click on a button because they think it's a button but it's not, like that's some of the most
Right.
useful stuff that you can get back from a user, is that kind of stuff where they're actually stumbling and not where they're actually it's going well.
Right. One of the things that I thought was super interesting that we learned is that like you want to like people have I think we call them mind maps or like systematic maps of how they expect things to work. Because a lot of
Yeah,
times I was like, oh, as a product manager or designer, like you want to make like the newest thing, like you want to push the envelope, kind of like Apple did, and like create
yeah,
something new. And then like as we did that, we realized that people are just confused. Like they're expecting
yeah,
something to work one way, or like they're expecting it to be in one spot. And if you change that up on them, it like
yeah,
really messes with them. And so that was
yeah.
always like one of those things I was like, wow. Like,
I used to
there's a
joke
lot to
with
this.
I used to joke with Braden, like when him and I were working together when we were designerless, and so I was designing a
Mhm.
bunch of stuff, and I would always joke with him because as I was picking up more and more of the design stuff, I like come across like a design principle, just like
Mhm.
some random law, and I might butcher, I might forget it. I think it was Jacob's law though that like describes what you're talking about, and I was always joke with Braden like, got to make sure that Jacob's law is taken care of, where it's just like the path that like people usually take, and like we've had apps and web apps for a long time now, and like there's certain practices that like people are just used to, like you mentioned, right? Like people are
Yeah.
so used to like doing it a certain way, like the X and the right hand button, whatever it may be. And if you don't do it that way, you'll watch them do it first, and like, oh crap, no, it's over here.
Mhm.
You'll like watch them do that, and you're like, oh wow, I didn't know I like misdesigned it, but like people just have
Yeah.
a mind map in their brains.
Oh my gosh, that's actually happened because we just updated some of our, we have iPhones and we updated it to like the new like iOS 26 or something, and they
26,
changed
yeah.
they changed like the library setup for like photos, and they changed some other things. And it's just like my brain was just because I've read like a lot of books like that, and like I've had these classes, and I look at this and I'm like, this must not have like gone past anybody because like no one that I talk to likes how it looks now, and everyone's kind of like going like wants it to be the way it was because you got used to it. So
Yeah,
I can totally see how that like really messes with people's heads.
for sure.
Yeah. Do you? I mean, in like design, is there anything that you think that you've learned or any resource that you've had that has really helped? Like, have you read any books that are helpful? Or like, I guess maybe a better question, because we kind of already talked about that, is like when we talked with like Braden and Taylor about this kind of like PM engineering hybrid, we talked a lot about like what people can kind of do to kind of position themselves in a way that they can kind of start doing that. And a lot of
Yeah.
it was like, building side projects or like getting hands-on experience. Is there anything in the design world that you think is helpful if people want to kind of position themselves more as like a product manager slash designer? Like our
Yeah.
portfolio's a thing. Is there anything
I
like
think,
that?
yeah. So I think, I mean, to mention portfolios, I think designers, that's one of their big things they lean on, so
Hmm.
we can go there. But I think you mentioned, book beforehand. One that I read was, I think it's called The Design of Everyday Things, which is
Yep.
interesting because it's not like well, it's a design book, right? But it's not like how to design web apps. It's like the design of
Yeah.
anything, right? Everything, anything and everything. And like it hits on the exact concept that you talked about of like, hey, we're used to having this thing do this thing a certain way, right? Like one of the very first examples that it uses is like door handles.
Hmm.
Like he like the door handle was the wrong way, and he went to push instead of pull, and he was like, "This is supposed to work where I can pull." It's like one of those doors with like the big handles, and like not like the
Right.
like the big handles. And if the handle's facing you, you're supposed to be able to pull it. if there's no handle, you push it, right? And he went
Hmm.
to pull it and it didn't work because the handle was designed the wrong way, right? And so like it just kind of gets you thinking about design, right? Of anything and puts you more in a design mindset, because it doesn't really talk too much about as much about like designing web apps as it does like just
Hmm.
design thinking in general, right? Which is kind of
Right.
it's a good way that you can kind of put your mind in that space, right? And then, on the, positioning yourself to kind of be more of a designer slash engineer is like, or I mean, designer slash product manager is just kind of like what you mentioned, just kind of like doing things that, you mentioned with, with Braden and Taylor, like they're just going on building things, even if it's like using AI, they're
Hmm.
like building apps, right? Or doing things find those opportunities to just like design things, right? Like
Hmm.
one of the things that Braden built with AI super early on was like a talk to text type of thing. And it was when we were working together, he's like, "Hey man, can you design this for me? Like, I don't like I don't like designing. It's not my strong suit. Like, can you just like slap together a design for me for this?" And so like just looking for opportunities to like design things that you can like put on your portfolio and then, be able to talk to them, why you did this, what XYZ, why you did this and didn't do this, and some research behind why you did it, and just kind of to show that skill off a little bit. And then I think, dude, this when I was when I was heavily into like having to design stuff at my company before we had a designer, it was like just before AI was like mainstream, like just a couple years ago. So
Hmm.
it's like it's weird talking about that because it's like it's my current job. AI is everywhere now, but like it was like just right before it. I feel like it like really took off. And now like product managers have with such an easy time if they wanted to like have something for someone to look at very quickly with just like some
Hmm.
AI, yeah, companions. And I haven't looked into a ton of them yet on the AI or the design side, but like I feel like that's just a huge win for us now where we can lean on AI to create wireframes and create things for people to look at really quickly for as we're kind of explaining and showing off our ideas.
Yeah, I think it's kind of crazy that like the idea, like the whole I've seen a lot of people who are successful, like whether they're trying to become engineers or anything, it's all about just like this time out of work that they're building things.
Yeah.
Like they're either designing things, they're like doing it on their free time. And like those projects that they build, like could end up being something awesome, but like I feel like that pushes a lot of people forward. And I think some people, I don't know if they just like don't want to do it or they just maybe they just don't have the time. Like some people are limited on time, but like
Yeah.
I highly stress that if you want to get into anything, like spending time out of work and actually just doing it rather than just trying to like research it, like just go ahead in and just start trying it and get it in front of people. Well, kind of like what you were saying is just like a great approach to that.
Yeah, it's such a big thing for me. Like the way I learn is like I could sit in a classroom and like just hear something all day, and it's like just not quite hitting,
Hmm.
until I actually get my hands on and like go do something. Like, oh, okay, this is what they were talking about, or this is like it makes so much more sense now. It just connects all the dots for me.
Yeah. And I know kind of mean pivoting off that, like being in the classroom, I know you kind of talked about how you did an MBA that kind of helped you get into product management. You kind of designed your MBA very specifically like for product management. Could you walk people through that or kind of explain kind of what that process is like?
Yeah, for sure. So, um, it's interesting because there's like so many different routes to product management, but there's not like just
Mhm.
one, So like people all the time,
Yeah.
I'm sure they ask you constantly. You've had a lot of guests that talk about that, right? Where it's like, hey, how do I break in? And it's like, some
Hmm.
people just kind of like happen upon it. Like some people just like fall backwards into it. And going back to when I, kind of learned about it, I was like, okay, like at least I had an idea of it pretty early on. I was like, okay, I want to do that thing. And but I also knew like I just like MBA was always a goal of mine, So like instead of going in there, I always like felt like hey, let me do marketing or something like that, or like MBA is pretty generalist, and so
Hmm.
um, I went to the U full-time MBA program at the U. Which is a great for allowing you to kind of tailor your learning a little bit. Some of the more like super high profile MBA programs. Sometimes they're a little more old school, a little more like this is exactly how you have to get your MBA, which is
Hmm.
cool too, right? Like great programs, and that's great too. But like, yeah, you like obviously there was a lot of core classes that like you have to do accounting and you have to do finance and
Hmm.
those types of things too, right? But like your whole second year, you could really kind of tailor what you wanted to do with it, and the U even had a couple of like dual master's degrees that you could do like on top
Hmm.
of each other, and like the whole second year was kind of focused on the second master's program. So I actually did a second master's in information systems, which I don't really
Mm.
claim. Like I no way feel like I'm a master of information systems, but like MBA was kind of the focus, right? And then the classes in information systems that I took were like just helpful because I got to take a couple coding classes and I got to, just kind of learn more about information technology and how computers work, just like that type of stuff that like I felt like helped me as I was, I knew I wanted to do product management. So I was trying to find like really anything in the MBA program that would kind of just help me along that path and kind of get me to that goal of product management.
Yeah. Did you ever feel, I don't know, I mean, I've never really thought about it this way because like I studied like communication and technology in college and I took a bunch of coding classes, just like on my electives. Like I took a bunch. And I
Yeah.
feel like when I took those classes, what I learned in those classes was good. But then when I got to like actual corporate and we're actually building stuff, I feel like nothing that I learned like really applied. Like I feel like I was on ground zero again. Like, okay, now we have to like really use like structures and there's all these different things. Do you ever feel that way with like maybe the courses you took or any like the design courses? Is there a difference between like the classroom learning versus what's actually done as like a designer in like a corporate world?
I think so. I mean, it's because I think feel like so much of the time you're in the classroom, you spend talking about like theory and
Mm,
like how things work almost, right? Which like is nice to set a foundation for it, but like if you look at it like a boot camp, for example, like they skip all that for the most part, right? From what I understand,
hmm
hey, let's just get our hands dirty right away. And I don't know if there's maybe I'm sure there's some benefit to just like having like shaping your thinking a little bit, and like how like all that theory behind you kind of just helps shape how you're thinking about the problem and those types of things. But yeah, I do agree that like some of that stuff is just like, man, it's just easier to get your hands dirty. And I think that's why those like, boot camp type of things are so popular. And like a lot of these design courses are like, hey, let's just really dive into like let's design some things, like let's definitely talk about some design principles, but then let's like apply them right away.
hmm Yeah, I know Braden, when we talked with him, he like even talked about how because he's a product manager right now, but he is trying to get more into like the engineering side of things. And he's like actually asked to like do tasks at his work, like actually commit to the code base, like either
Yeah.
like smaller scripts or like little projects or take some Jira tickets that he can actually do. Is that something that like designers could do as well? Is that something that you, I mean, with your experience in the corporate world, could you just as a PM go and be like, hey, I kind of want some like more design responsibility, I guess, or like to be in those conversations or like maybe do a smaller design project? Is that a thing?
Yeah, I think so. At our work now, the product managers kind of do the initial wireframing almost, like just because they have all the background about the project and what they want to do and what the feature is and what problem it's trying to solve. And of course, we have the context of what the current app is, and like how it
Hmm
fits in. And so, um, I think we're asked in our company now to like off the bat just kind of like really early like early wireframe stuff, out. And I think that you could easily turn that into like medium fidelity or even highish fidelity.
hmm
Like it really helps when if your company's like far enough along where there's design systems in place, where you can like follow structures, follow patterns for your app, and then also like use the pieces that are already built, like like Legos, right? Like building blocks. Where like, hey,
hmm
we already have this component, this component, and like now you can just go put them together, right? And so
hmm
I think it's one of the like you brought up like, hey, let's talking to Braden talking to the engineers and like, hey, can I get involved and do a little more? I think you could probably do the same thing on the design side of things too, and say, hey, like I know we're supposed to be prototyping things or wireframing things. Hey, can I go a little farther with it?
hmm
Can I take a first crack at the full design of it, or those types of things, or can I take you to the medium fidelity and then you can finish it off, or can I go a little farther with it, and then maybe you and I can like I've never heard this term before, but the pair programming, right? Like pair design,
Yeah.
whatever that may be, right?
hmm
Like, can we like pair design on this thing and like, you make sure that I'm doing it right, and some of the things that are hardest, make sure that you're pixel perfect and those types of pieces, which are maybe more difficult, and that's good for a designer to be there to make sure you got the right things, depending on how strict your company is. But I feel like you could easily stretch
hmm
what the product management what the product manager could do to take it just a little bit farther, with the collaboration with the designer, as long as you're not stepping on any toes, that communication line's open. And
Right. I think that's totally one of the things I've seen, at least in like my short early career, is just like being eager and being like, hey, go to your manager, like, I want to do this. Like, this is what I like, give me an opportunity. And I've never been told no. And I've never heard someone who's been like, like their manager's like, no, like, you don't want to take on more. Like, you need to like relax. And like, I feel like everyone is always like, oh my gosh, like, for sure, let's work with something. Like, let's work it out and let's get you some more experience in that. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because
I
if
think
you
it's one
think
of those
about,
big
if you
things.
like just take a step back and think about it, it's like, wait, you're telling me you want to do more of my job and like I can take,
Yeah.
I can do less of my work? Yeah, man, sure, take
Yeah,
it.
like you want to work more and you're like excited about it, like
Yeah.
sure, like go ahead, like knock yourself out. So I feel like that's also a good thing that I don't see a lot of people do, which is interesting. I don't think a lot
Yeah.
of people really like push that. Maybe the conversation's harder for some people, but like I highly recommend for anyone who does want to do that, just like talk to your whoever is doing it and be like, "Hey, let me help you." Like let me just be there and do something, and that helps a
Sure.
lot.
I think dude, like just even going back to like product management in general, I think you've had, some people on your on the podcast have even mentioned that just like that's how they got their start, was just like talking,
Yeah.
like they're not in product management, they're just like, hey, can I let me help you? Can I do something product related? Can I
Mhm.
do this research for you? Can I do this, that, or the other? And just like being eager and just like, hey, yeah, sure, help me out with my job. I'll love it.
Yeah. Yeah, take even like I always just took like for my manager like the medial tasks. I was like, you don't
Yeah.
like assigning these things out, like you hate it. I just let me do it so I can have it like on my resume. And then eventually like I started getting pulled into meetings and now I'm like kind of second in command. So it's like that definitely is a way that people should take more advantage of, especially in the UPG community where there's a lot of like really eager product managers who want to do stuff. Like
Yeah.
that's a great way to kind of open the door to a lot of ways. Kind of as we're wrapping up, because we're coming up on time. Do you have any last like advice for people out there who are either want to get in design, are designers, or just anything you think the UPG community could benefit from?
Um, I think just, one of the biggest things that I've found like helpful and just like once you kind of get into product management in general and is just like get getting let's say buzz, but like turning up the level of communication between you and like the designer and the engineer, right? That you've heard, the product trio, product triad, whatever it may be, right? Like being, it kind of helps, sometimes being in the office for these types of things, right? Where you can just kind of like be with them a little more, like hang out with them a little bit, or like spend your lunches with them, those types of things where it's just like if they can trust you, it's so much easier to like ask to help about with those types of things, right? So like
Hmm.
just like building trust with people, I think is such a huge thing. And like sometimes that is tough on like a remote work type of thing, right? I know a lot of people are, kind of going back to the office a little bit, and I think that is one of the major benefits of it. I'm not I work from home a few days a week and then in office a few
Hmm.
days a week as well. And I think that like that's my favorite thing about like going back to the office. I love working from home too, just because there's so much, you can get more done at home. But like the
Hmm.
the relationship building, I think is such a huge thing because it just makes it so much easier when you have a slight disagreement with how things should be designed or a slight disagreement with how something should be engineered or like the feature itself or whatever, right? If you both trust each other, you both have a good relationship, or the three of you have a good relationship where you kind of just work together. So I think, that like just kind of bringing it all the way around, I think that like just has been super helpful for me in my career, is just like spending a little extra time to, to build those relationships. And that'll, I think in the long run help you out as a product manager, but also like if you want to lean more towards design or lean more towards engineering or whatever it may be, right? Like they're way more eager to help you if you're, if those relationships are built pretty strongly.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, a lot of the stuff you talked about tonight, I feel like people could really take in and like apply it right now and kind of push themselves forward towards that. But Ryan, thanks again for hopping on.
Yeah,
This was great. I'm excited to share this out.
thanks, dude. We'll talk to you later.